Welcome to the Nonfiction Insights channel.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving deep into Cal Newport's Deep Work. Rules for focused success in a distracted world.
Ah, yes. A really timely book.
Okay, let's jump right in. So the foundation of the book is this whole concept of deep work. How does Newport actually define that?
Well, he defines it as activities you perform in a state of total distraction-free concentration.
Okay.
And these activities push your cognitive capabilities right to their limit.
So really intense focus.
Exactly. And he argues these efforts create new value, they improve your skills, and they're genuinely hard for other people to just copy.
Right. So for someone listening who's trying to learn something complex, this means carving out that distraction-free time isn't just like a nice bonus.
No, not at all.
It's essential.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable, he'd say.
Right. It's that focused intensity that leads to real progress. And to really get why deep work is so powerful, Newport contrasts it with its opposite, shallow work. What does that look like day to day?
Oh yeah, shadow work. That's all the stuff that feels busy but maybe isn't deeply productive, like the less demanding logistical tasks, answering emails, scheduling calls.
That admin stuff.
Yeah, the kind of tasks you can often do while you're kind of distracted, maybe listening to something else.
Right, multitasking territory.
What? Exactly. And the crucial difference, why Newport hammers on deep work, is that these shallow tasks, they tend not to create much new value in the world. It's more like maintenance.
Keeping the wheels turning, not building the engine.
Perfectly put. And Newport argues that in today's economy, especially the information economy, the ability to do deep work is becoming way more important. Why that shift?
Well, he points out that we've moved, away from an industrial economy where maybe you could just crank widgets without intense focus.
Right. Repetitive tasks.
Now, more of us are knowledge workers, so our actual job relies on our ability to concentrate, to process complex stuff without getting sidetracked all the time.
So it's like a core skill, a competitive advantage almost.
Totally. Even if companies don't always structure work that way,
Yeah.
think about learning. 1 hour of truly focused study, like really focused, is worth way more than, say, 3 hours where you're constantly checking your phone or emails. The quality of attention matters hugely.
That makes sense. It's about producing high-quality understanding, which needs sustained attention.
The book gives some great examples of people who really got this right.
Oh, definitely. Some really compelling stories.
Who stands out?
Well, there's Carl Jung, the psychologist.
Oh, interesting.
He literally built a stone tower, his Bollingen Tower, specifically as a retreat for deep thinking and writing.
He built a tower.
Yeah. And he actually cut back on his clinical work, his patient time, because he knew this uninterrupted deep work time was crucial for his big goal, changing how we understand the mind.
Wow. That's quite a commitment. Not just finding a quiet room, but like architecture for focus.
Exactly. A major life decision driven by the need for depth.
Who else?
Then there's a more modern example, Jason Ben. He wanted to learn coding.
Okay.
So he basically locked himself in a room for 2 months. Just textbooks, notes, no computer, no internet.
Whoa, cold turkey.
Totally. And this super intense focused learning period allowed him to skill up incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Led to major career advancement, big salary jump. That really shows the power of immersion, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And even later, when he was working in tech, he'd block out hours for programming, totally offline. No email, nothing.
It illustrates that intensity formula Newport talks about, right? It's not just hours, but hours times focus.
Exactly. Quality, time spent, X intensity of focus. And Newport himself, he kind of lives this, doesn't he?
Yeah, he uses himself as an example. Managed to publish multiple books, get his PhD, become a tenured professor, all while apparently finishing work around 5 or 6 p.m. most days.
Ow.
His strategy was basically ruthlessly cutting out shallow work and making sure he got like 3 to 4 hours of pure deep work almost every day.
So it's not about working more, but working more deeply.
Precisely. High achievement doesn't have to mean burnout, but it probably requires focused effort.
That's a powerful idea for anyone feeling overwhelmed. What about David Heinemeier Hansson and Nate Silver? They're mentioned too.
Right. Hansson, the creator of Ruby on Rails, is shown as someone whose impact came from focused creation in the tech world.
A superstar in the new economy, Newport calls them.
Yeah. And Nate Silver, with his complex data analysis, really showcases the value of working deeply with information, mastering the tools, finding insights others miss.
So these aren't just anecdotes. They're examples of how deep work translates to tangible success and impact across different fields.
For sure. And Newport's bigger point, beyond just career success is that a deep life is a good life.
Hmm. What does he mean by that?
That there's a real profound satisfaction that comes from engaging deeply with something meaningful, pushing your own abilities. It's fulfilling.
Okay, so deep work is valuable, it's fulfilling,
Right.
but the next big idea is that it's actually rare. Why? Why isn't everyone doing this if it's so great?
Yeah, that's the paradox. Newport points to several trends, especially in business, that actively undermine deep work.
Like what?
Well, open office plans are a big one.
Ah, yes, the bane of concentration.
Right. Designed for serendipitous collaboration, but often they just mean constant noise and interruption. He even mentions Facebook's huge Open HQ as an example.
The irony is strong there. Trying to foster collaboration, but maybe killing the deep thought needed for valuable ideas.
Exactly. What else hinders focus?
Constant connectivity. That expectation that you're always available, you'll respond instantly.
Instant messaging, email alerts.
Yeah, they slice your attention into tiny, useless pieces. And then there's the pressure, particularly if you create stuff or have a public-facing role, to be constantly present on social media.
Right. The book mentions the author Jonathan Franzen catching flack for criticizing Twitter,
Yeah, he basically said it was a distraction from serious writing, and people reacted like he was a dinosaur.
which highlights this underlying assumption that being online, being visible, is somehow inherently necessary or productive.
Even if it pulls you away from the core work. This ties into Newport's principle of least resistance, doesn't it?
It does. Explain that one.
The idea is like when there's no clear, immediate feedback on what's truly valuable, we humans tend to drift towards whatever feels easiest right now.
And shallow work often feels easier.
Totally. Answering a quick email feels more immediately satisfying, gives you that little dopamine hit of completion compared to tackling a really hard chapter or complex problem.
So the easy stuff wins out over the important stuff because the payoff for the important stuff is delayed.
Exactly. And it's hard to measure the cost of distraction or the value of deep focus in the short term, so these shallow work cultures persist.
It's fascinating. He mentions Richard Feynman, the physicist, again here.
Oh yeah, how did Feynman deal with this?
Apparently, he deliberately cultivated a reputation for being slightly irresponsible.
Uh-huh, really?
Yeah, like saying no to things, claiming he was busy, specifically to protect these long, unbroken stretches of time he needed for his real good physics work.
That's brilliant. Setting boundaries by playing irresponsible. He knew the value of uninterrupted time.
He did. And there's another story, Matthew Crawford, the shop class's soulcraft guy.
Right, the philosopher who became a motorcycle mechanic.
Yeah. He left a think tank job partly to escape what he called the bewildering psychic landscape of knowledge work, the constant emails, the abstract goals, and find the tangible satisfaction of fixing something real.
Which deep work, whether intellectual or manual, can provide that sense of concrete accomplishment?
Definitely. And underpinning all this, Newport talks about the cult of the internet.
What's the cult?
It's this almost automatic assumption that anything internet-related is good, innovative, necessary.
Like new shiny tech must be better.
Yeah, and that belief often makes us prioritize online stuff, even shallow social media scrolling, over potentially more valuable offline deep work or learning. We equate being online with being productive.
Okay, so deep work is rare because of open offices, constant connection, our own psychology favoring the easy path, the difficulty of measuring depth, and the sort of tech-centric bias.
That sums it up pretty well.
So the big question for our listener, how do we fight back? How do we actually cultivate more deep work? Newport gives 4 rules. Let's break them down. Rule #1, work deeply.
Right. This first rule is all about that intensity formula we mentioned. High quality work equals time spent X intensity of focus.
Okay.
It means when you do schedule time for learning or focused work, you have to protect that intensity fiercely.
And this connects to the idea of deliberate practice, which needs specific conditions.
Absolutely. Deliberate practice, the kind that actually makes you better, requires your full attention and some kind of feedback loop. Newport quotes the expert Anders Ericsson saying, diffused attention is almost antithetical to it.
You can't get better if you're half-focused.
Nope. For a learning, it means really engaging with challenging material, not just passively reading while distracted.
And the book even goes into the neuroscience, the myelin stuff. Can you explain that simply?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Think of myelin as insulation around the neurons in your brain.
Okay.
When you practice something with intense focus, your brain wraps more myelin around the specific circuits involved in that skill.
Like strengthening the connection.
Exactly. It makes the signals travel faster and cleaner. So Newport says, To be great at something is to be well myelinated. Deep, focused work literally builds a better brain for that skill.
Wow. So distractions aren't just annoying, they're actively hindering that myelin building process.
Precisely. Which leads to Sophie Leroy's concept of attention residue. What's that about?
That's the idea that even when you switch tasks quickly, like a quick phone check while studying your brain doesn't fully disengage from the first task.
Okay.
A piece of your attention, a residue, stays behind, which means you have less mental capacity available for the new task.
So multitasking, even quick context switching, degrades performance on both tasks.
Yes, that's the finding. So for learning, it suggests batching similar tasks together. Do all your research, then all your writing rather than jumping back and forth constantly. Minimize that switching cost.
That's a really practical takeaway. Okay, rule #2. Embrace boredom. This sounds counterintuitive.
It does, right. In a world selling constant stimulation. But the logic is that our nonstop diet of digital distraction has effectively weakened our focus muscle.
We've lost the ability to just be special.
Kinda. Newport mentions Clifford Nass's research showing chronic multitaskers actually perform worse on tests of cognitive control. We train our brains to crave novelty, so we struggle to focus on anything that requires sustained effort without immediate reward.
So just taking an occasional digital detox isn't enough.
Newport argues no. While breaks are good, you need consistent practice in resisting distraction to actually rewire your brain.
Like concentration exercises.
Exactly. He calls them concentration calisthenics. Strategies like scheduling your internet time in advance and sticking to it, actively avoiding it outside those blocks.
And he even finds value in those moments we're forced to wait, like in a queue.
Yeah. Instead of instantly pulling out your phone, just wait, be bored. He sees it as training. You're practicing sustaining attention without external stimuli, strengthening that focus muscle for when you really need it for deep learning.
Interesting. Okay, rule #3 is probably the most controversial. Quit social media.
Yep. That gets a reaction.
Why does he advocate for something so drastic? Isn't some social media useful?
He argues our usual way of choosing these tools is flawed. He calls it the any benefit approach,
Meaning?
meaning we adopt a platform if we can think of any possible benefit, however small, without seriously weighing the significant downsides, the addiction, the time suck, the constant attention fragmentation.
So we focus on a minor potential positive and ignore the major guaranteed negative.
Pretty much. For learning, how often does a quick check turn into 30 minutes down a rabbit hole, completely derailing your focus?
Guilty. So what's the alternative approach?
He proposes a craftsman approach to tool selection.
Like a woodworker choosing chisels.
Exactly. A craftsman chooses tools based on whether they substantially and positively impact their core work, and if that positive impact clearly outweighs the negatives, it's a much higher bar than just any benefit.
So, applied to learning, you'd ask, does this specific platform truly significantly help me achieve my learning goals more than it hinders me with distraction?
Right. And he suggests using the law of the vital few, the 80-20 rule.
How does that apply?
Identify the critical 20% of activities or tools that deliver 80% of your learning results. Maybe it's certain databases, specific online courses, direct communication with experts. Focus your online time there.
And he points out that many successful people like Malcolm Gladwell or Michael Lewis aren't constantly on Twitter, suggesting it's not essential for deep work.
Exactly. So his practical strategy is drastic, but maybe revealing. Try a 30-day break, a packing party for social media.
It's quick cold turkey for a month.
Yeah. The idea is that distance gives you perspective. After 30 days, you can more rationally assess if those platforms were truly adding value proportional to the time and attention they consumed.
Okay, that's a challenge. Finally, rule #4, train the shallows. This is about minimizing the time spent on that low-value, shallow work.
Right. Recognizing it exists and actively reducing it. He offers several strategies. First, schedule every minute of your day.
That sounds intense. Does he mean literally every minute?
Not necessarily rigidly, but more about being intentional. Instead of drifting through the day reacting to things, you block out time for specific tasks, including deep work. He mentions Arnold Bennett's Day Within a Day for self-improvement in free hours.
And Jason Fried's company moving to a 4-day week.
Yeah, Basecamp. They found focusing intensely for 4 days produced results as good as or better than a less focused 5-day wint. It forces you to prioritize deep tasks. For learning, it means actually putting study blocks on your calendar.
Makes sense. Another strategy, quantify the depth of every task. How do you do that?
He suggests a simple heuristic. How long would it take to train a smart college grad with no specific background to do this task?
Oh, okay.
If the answer is not long, it's likely shallow. If it would take months of training, it's deep. The goal is to bias your time towards the tasks that require longer training, the deeper stuff.
That's a useful filter. What else?
Asking your boss or yourself, if you're self-directed, about the ideal ratio of deep versus shallow work.
Making it explicit.
Exactly. Having that conversation forces clarity on priorities. If everyone agrees deep work is valuable, but your schedule is 90% shallow tasks, there's a disconnect to address.
Good point. Then there's fixed schedule productivity.
Right. Set a hard stop time for your work or study day, say 5 p.m., and don't go past it.
How does that help?
It creates a constraint. You know you have a limited time, so you have to work backward and figure out how to be productive within that time. It forces you to ruthlessly cut out the fluff and focus.
Creates urgency.
Totally. And the last one under this rule is become hard to reach, especially regarding email.
Oh boy.
Things like using sender filters, being really clear and thorough in your own emails to prevent endless back and forth. Do more work upfront to save time later.
Exactly. And controversially, being okay with not responding to emails that are ambiguous, unimportant, or where nothing bad happens if you don't reply.
Setting boundaries on your accessibility.
Right. Prioritizing your focused time over being instantly available to everyone.
Okay, those 4 rules are a solid framework. But he also talks about training the mind itself for focus, like exercises.
Yeah, beyond just structuring your time, he suggests productive meditation.
Which isn't about emptying the mind.
No, it's the opposite. It's using times when you're physically occupied but mentally free, like walking, commuting, showering, to focus intensely on a specific professional or learning problem.
So directed thinking.
Yes, structure it. Review the variables, define the next step or question, try to make progress, and consolidate any insights. It's training focused thought.
And memorization. Why does he bring that up?
He suggests that practicing memorization, like memorizing a deck of cards using techniques like the memory palace, strengthens the underlying mental muscles needed for concentration.
Interesting, like cognitive weightlifting.
Kinda, yeah. It builds your capacity to hold information and maintain focus, which benefits all deep work, including learning.
Okay, so bringing this all together for our listener who wants to learn quickly and thoroughly, how do they apply this stuff starting now?
It really boils down to intentionality. First, schedule dedicated deep work blocks for your learning. Treat them like important appointments.
Protect that time.
Absolutely. And during those blocks, eliminate distractions ruthlessly. Notifications off, unnecessary tabs closed, maybe even physically move to a different space.
Create a focus sanctuary.
Right. And when you hit those complex ideas, actively use that Feynman technique we talked about.
Try to explain it simply.
Exactly. Explain it out loud, write it down, teach it to an imaginary student. Where do you get stuck? Where is it fuzzy? That's where you need more deep focus.
And remember, rule #2, embrace boredom between sessions.
Yes. Don't immediately fill the gaps with your phone. Let your mind wander, consolidate the information. That downtime is surprisingly productive for learning.
And be selective about resources. Use the craftsman approach. Are these books, courses, websites truly vital for your goal, or just adding noise?
Great point. Okay, let's do a quick critical review. What are the big strengths of deep work?
Well, it argues really persuasively for something that feels intuitively true, but often gets lost. The immense value of focused effort in a world drowning in distraction.
It puts a name and a framework to that feeling.
Exactly. And it doesn't just diagnose the problem, it offers very concrete, actionable strategies. It's practical.
And for someone trying to learn, the emphasis on intention, fighting distraction, building focus, it's incredibly relevant. It directly tackles why learning often feels so hard today.
It really does. It gives you permission almost to disconnect and prioritize focus.
Anything listeners should keep in mind as potential critiques or cautions.
Maybe that some strategies might feel extreme or difficult to implement depending on your job or life situation. Quitting social media entirely, scheduling every minute. That might not be feasible for everyone.
Right. It's important to adapt the principles, not necessarily follow every tactic literally.
Exactly. Find what works for you. Remember, Newport himself built up to his level of deep work. It's a process. Even small steps towards more focus, like 1 distraction-free hour a day, can make a big difference over time.
Start small, be consistent.
That's the key.
Okay. We really hope this deep dive into deep work has given you some valuable insights and practical strategies you can use to boost your focus and make your learning more effective.
Remember, the ability to concentrate deeply isn't fixed. It's a skill you can definitely cultivate.
So maybe take a moment to think. What's one thing from this discussion that really stood out to you? What's one small step you could take this week to incorporate a bit more deep work into your learning?
Reflecting on that can be really powerful.
Thank you for joining us on the Nonfiction Insights channel.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Please subscribe to the Nonfiction Insights channel.